welcome back. We are here at What Up Sports for Hall of Fame. Ooh. And this is, you know what, Coach Gomes decided to stay for this one because, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to talk about, we're creating our own Hall of Fame. Let's just put it out there.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to be part of not only the discussion that we kind of already had in the first show. So if you missed it, definitely watch the first show. We want people to be a part of this. So we're glad that we're adding a voice into this. But we got to set some standards, right? We've talked about the Pete Roses, the Barry Bonds, those kind of things. We haven't talked a lot about people that really are they Hall of Famers? They're in the Hall of Fame, but I mean, happy for them, but come on. Your standards got too low, right?
Buddies, right? Yeah.
Right. So let's create the first Hall of Fame standard. What is the first Hall of Fame standard, that criteria that we need to actually create a list so that we can go to the fans with a poll for our very first Hall of Famer? What is the first standard for What Up Sports Hall of Fame?
Ooh, that's a good one. For me, the standard is the guys who have the clean career, the ones who do it right. Like you talk about Derek Jeters and those guys, like they had the long careers, but you didn't hear about the baby mamas, you didn't hear all the drama, you don't hear all that stuff. I want the guy who did it right. Like the criteria for me has to be, I don't want to see you in negative publicity. I don't want to see any of that stuff. And that's got to be criteria number one for me. I want you to be the captain. I want you to be that guy who is the face of the sport. You got to be that's top of the line right there. You got to be
that. Would eliminate like a Pete Rose then.
100%.
Interesting. Okay. I'm about like what happened on the field.
No, yeah, Pete, okay, if we're going back to Pete Rose there, like you just said, what Pete did on the field, he's a Hall of Famer.
Right.
What he did.
He's eliminated because of the negativity?
I don't know. I think people just didn't like him. It was a popularity contest. Pete was not very likable. But when you have more hits than anybody who's played the game, you're a Hall of Famer. I don't care.
I mean, and don't get me wrong. He was an asshole on and off the field, especially to the sports writers. They did him dirty, period, case closed. And I remember as a kid always, reading Sporting News and all that stuff every week when we got it, or the Sports Illustrated. Only time you ever really saw a story of Pete Rose is when he was getting close to hitting the hit mark, the 4,100 hits. And it was like, man, looking back at that now, you're like, really? Why weren't they on this guy all the time? He consistently batting 300 plus every season, him and Tony Gwynn. How many times did they battle for batting championships? Later on in Pete's life, obviously. But, you sit there and you look at that, it's like, man.
And so what I've heard offline, I've heard in conversations, I've heard even a conversation before we started the show, longevity, right, is a big part. But how, I'm in total agreement. Is it by era, or is it of all time? Because you have to consider that Joe Montana era was different than Troy Aikman's, which was also different than Tom Brady's, which is also different than Patrick Mahomes. So do their stats necessarily equal up? Because we had a great conversation with Steve Berline about, Patrick Mahomes doesn't have receivers that are held and punched and attacked like Michael Irvin was.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is hard to create this criteria. I know this. And so are we looking at longevity over the era? Or like, if you had a all-time record and it stood 20 years, does that qualify you? Do you have to have a record that stands? It doesn't just get beat, Yeah,
I like that. I like, sports are numbers. Sports,
yeah.
there's stats. You got to be a stat rat, and you got to be, you got to be up there, in the top 50 of everybody who's done it, to even be considered. So, and going back to the Montana and the Brady's and the those guys, I mean, Joe Montana to me is the best quarterback who's ever played, and Tom Brady went to my high school, so I'm a Tom Brady fan, but biasly a 49er fan. I think Joe got smashed by Jim Brown. You can't touch quarterbacks anymore. I mean, if these guys, I mean, you can't touch a receiver. Patrick Mahomes, I mean, you touch Patrick Mahomes, a 15-yard penalty flag's come flying out. So is the game easier for him? 1,000%. So, yeah, I think the criteria are longevity, and we got to take into consideration the way all games have changed. They've changed. The rules have changed and everything's changing. So, I mean, are players as tough as they used to be? Or is the longevity should be happening because you can't touch guys anymore, so your career should automatically be a little longer. So, it's you got to take you got to weigh a lot of things when it comes to the criteria and what the list consists of.
I'm gonna throw out a name because you guys are baseball guys, and probably one of the guys that's literally at the top of my list. Longevity, did it right. Eras, stuff like that, but his eras has transferred decades. Cal Ripken Jr.'s got to be up at the top for me for what he did, longevity, Iron Man, how he did it right, that kind of stuff. So I'm always looking at as a Hall of Fame as somebody like that,
No
right?
doubt.
And I kind of hold that criteria for what I want to use for other people.
Well, I like the fact that you brought up Cal because he reminds me of Derek Jeter. Like they're the same kind of guy for me. Like I'll put them in the same Mount Rushmore of 4 baseball players who set the criteria for who should be a Hall of Famer.
Right.
Now, you go to work 19 years in a row and don't miss a day of work. That's phenomenal. You won't see that record get broken. That is the one that will probably stand the longest because the way people take, coaches take guys in and out of lineups now, you definitely got to sit down, gonna take a day off. It's like the norm now. You will not see another Cal Ripken Jr. It won't happen.
No, it won't. And then, we're just talking outside the bounds of the criteria, but moving our way in. I don't want to miss the people that didn't have a longevity that changed their sport forever. Forever.
Like Billy Sims.
I'm thinking Nadia Comaneci.
Whoa. Okay, going gymnast. Yeah, I love that.
Right? Won Olympics, first perfect 10 in history, and changed the sport forever.
She did.
That criteria's got to be in there.
Yeah, yeah. You change the sport in a memorable type of way. It's got to put your name at the top of a list somewhere for sure.
Right, and so there's a lot of people in baseball that have some of that, football, soccer, stuff like that. I think there's boxing. There's things. If you've changed the sport forever and people still talk about that, that's got to be in the criteria realm because we keep talking longevity and not doing it right. And there's going to be people that didn't do it right that are probably going to fit in the criteria because we're going to have that kicker. But somebody
not Moody, right?
No,
sorry, you said that kicker. Bad joke. I know. I'm going.
Yeah, but I think you guys are getting what I'm saying. Is like, so how do we round that up? Because we went from here to like only did the perfect 10, change the sport forever.
Yeah.
Right. Michael Phelps was long period of time. That's longevity, but one perfect 10 changed the sport forever, and that has to be considered.
Yeah, definitely. When I think about changing the sport, I'll go back to Ricky Henderson, the guy who invented split screen. That changes sports. When you steal bases and all of a sudden they create a new way to show you the game by splitting the screen in half and showing the catcher panicking because he knows this guy's going to steal and you cannot throw him out. That's that's automatic ballot first ballot Hall of Famer in my book. I'm like, there you go. That's a sport changer right there. I'll go Ricky Henderson.
Right.
I would even go Bo Jackson with how he played both baseball and football at extremely high levels, even though he got
for a long period of time.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
he's got to be in the conversation. Does he get in right away with us? I don't think so. But is he in that conversation? Whereas, is he a real Hall of Famer? I think we're in that conversation. And that's the criteria is going to be interesting.
now there's a ball player that I'm going to throw out there that a lot of people haven't acknowledged and don't really acknowledge it, who I think should be in the Hall of Fame, but not very happy with the Hall of Fame. Dave Parker. And the reason being, Dave Parker, I mean, We Are Family, the Pittsburgh Pirates, brought them to one of their first world championships in the 70s, or not one of their first, but in the 70s, their last championship, 1979. And the way that he commanded the presence of other pitching staffs alone. Then he goes on to Cincinnati and does the same exact thing. Then thrives in Oakland and then went to Milwaukee and a few other places after that and still did phenomenal. And I don't think that he gets enough recognition, in my opinion, for him being the true leader that he actually is.
100% the Cobra.
Yep.
30,
You know it.
yeah. Love Dave. Dave, my old man and I sat in Candlestick Park one day, and I was sitting down the right field line by the right field foul pole, Reds Giants game, and Parker goes into the corner, runner on first base, and he disappears from where my dad and I are sitting. And all of a sudden, I see this ball come out, and it clears the first baseman cutoff man straight to home plate, throws this guy out by like 10 feet, and I'm sitting here going like, I've never seen an arm on an outfielder like that before in my life. My jaw basically hit the ground. My dad and I are looking at each other like, "Oh my God, did you just see that?" And I'm like, that blows my mind. Like to this day, I can still see it like it was yesterday. Not only everybody remembers Parker for being a left-handed hitter and having this crazy routine, but the guy had a phenomenal arm on him also.
I remember him in the 79 World Series in that same right field corner, throwing a guy out at third base on a line. I mean, I don't think this thing was more than 10 feet off the ground and threw a laser and gunned. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Lowenstein for the Orioles back then, something like that. I can't remember that far back.
Yeah. Phenomenal. For sure. I'm with you on the Dave Parker thing for sure.
So you bring it up like that. Let me ask you a question, because we're going to be talking. Let's talk some players, some people in history, because they're going to be in our conversation. You guys are really into baseball. Talk about some of the newer guys. Have we ever seen, because we're talking era, and will we ever see a Babe Ruth again? Could he be the best that ever was?
I don't know. I just, it's hard to go that far back. And, as a guy today, and I understand, the way guys take care of their bodies and just the way things are. I think back then, they're smoking cigars, drinking beers, not really taking care of themselves. I don't think the pitching was anywhere near what you see today, as far as like, everybody throws 98 and everybody has sharps. I don't think those pitchers existed back in the day. Now, I could be wrong. I know there was a handful of them that could have pitched in any era. But you're talking about Babe Ruth. I think he's a guy that could have played today, but I don't think he's as phenomenal as the players that play today.
No,
Okay. So again, we're talking about people that change the game. Is there anybody like them ever going to be again? Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Tiger Woods' son is going to eclipse him. He's already that phenomenal.
Oh, okay, that's a pretty fair statement.
Yeah, I do. I think Charlie's gonna take all his dad records and blow them out of the water.
Oh,
Interesting. That's cool.
Right.
Let's go with Pele.
Well, you got. I'm not a big soccer guy, but you got a few of those guys on the planet right now. You Beckham and so the kid Ronaldo. I mean, those guys are changing the game. They're Pele-ish, moving up to the next generation. So I just think you're always going to have that generational player that comes along that reminds you of a throwback guy from 20, 30, 40 years ago. I think those guys are always going to exist. I think they're always going to keep coming.
I'm gonna throw a curveball.
All right.
Hold on. I think touching on the point of the generational player, I think that is huge compared to all time. Um, Finding that all time is really difficult. But I think on the generational player, I think that's key right there.
right? Because that goes in. I'm showing it to our criteria too, and so this one's kind of a wrench because how do you? And this guy changed the sport better than probably anybody's changed the sport, but Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Is he the best skater in the world ever? But like, is there anything other than Tony Hawk?
Sean
Lance,
White. Sean White.
But still, it's those are the things we're talking about in Hall of Fame. And I hope people that are here I want to see comments. Like I want to have people bring it up because I know people have their favorite players and they can talk the whole LeBron thing and whatever, you know. I'm talking about legit. I mean, if you got to tell people you're the best, I don't know about that. But
you would have to say Jordan, because I don't care what anybody says. Jordan changed the game of basketball. And I mean, when he's coming down the lane getting clotheslined and freaking still making ridiculous baskets, now you won't see that. I mean, sorry, it gets me so frustrated now watching basketball. I mean, you put your pinky on LeBron and it's freaking technical foul and ejections. And
Right.
I mean, Lambeer would come up and literally clothesline Jordan, you know.
Jordan. I got to go back to Dr. J. I mean, I think Julius Irving created the Michael Jordans of the world. Like he's a game changer, world champ. Like I mean, there's you could go back and find these guys that changed the game. Dr. J's my guy.
I like
that. This is what I love about this conversation, you know, because we're digging deeper than what a normal, you know, a writer's gonna do. You know, what are their stats? Okay, well, this guy's in the Hall of Fame, but he was what, top 10 in his era? Well, what's he doing in there?
Right.
You know,
I mean, we got to actually start putting in some concrete rules because we keep on going off on tangents and going,
but that's what that's about, is to actually start to shrink that to make it a legit Hall of Fame, right? So we started off that longevity is important, but there are exceptions, right? Nadia Comaneci is a huge exception to that rule. You know, you have to consider that there are, and I can't think of them top of the name, but there are some race car drivers, right?
Yeah.
Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah, Dale Earnhardt.
Eddie.
John Force in NHRA. I mean, that guy's longevity changed the sport, continues to change the sport. I mean, there's so many different criteria. So our discussion about players in this is creeping us down into it.
Yeah.
So we have some criteria, but I think what we'll end up doing is getting some hard-nosed criteria, and then how far out will we go?
True.
Where it really gets interesting, right? That's the conversation. Maybe that's the things that you can talk about right now is, well, how do we start eliminating people who may be amazing, but how do we eliminate them in saying, you just aren't Hall of Fame? I tried to bring LeBron up just now. He's a guy that I'm like, is he? I mean, longevity, the points, but how long he played, like, there's some things that are going to bump him out of that, right?
Are you saying LeBron James is not a Hall of Famer?
I don't think he's a what up Hall of Famer. I think there's Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Michael Jordan, Dr. J. Like, I think they are way ahead of that. I think Curry's starting to creep into there.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Right?
Yeah,
is LeBron.
I like what you said a second ago is you create a criteria and then you start to break. When you start to break that out, like you said, that's where the guys come that don't belong. So it's got to get to a point where the criteria stays and then you don't start stretching it. If you don't fit in this criteria, you are no longer a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
You can't just keep throwing them out there.
Nope.
That's exactly what I was trying to get there.
I got you.
Yeah.
Because it's not to say that LeBron's not amazing, and he will get in the Hall of Fame. but he's not necessarily going to get in ours.
Nope.
Right. He might not be in ours, but he's going to get in because the criteria stretches, like you just said. And why are they? If you're not eclipsing certain things and you're not making monumental moments, or if you haven't changed the game in some type of way, what the hell are you putting on the green jacket, the yellow jackets, all these jackets? Why are you entitled to one of those? It's the criteria stretching, like you said, that is creating the, is that guy really a Hall of Famer? That's the question.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
You brought up game changers. Well, we all brought up game changers earlier. Curry. Think about how many years it took for the 3-point record to be broken, number one. Number two, and how badly did he destroy that record? And
That's game changer.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah. That's
And that's what we're talking about in the criteria. It's like, not only are you the best ever, you're so far above it
yep.
that there's no doubt.
Oh yeah. I mean, Ray Allen was phenomenal, and we all know that he worked ridiculously hard to get that 1-year record, and it was like nothing for Curry.
Because you still look at like Kareem, he still played a long time to get that scoring record.
He did.
But Jordan far outpaced him at a faster pace. Though, so it knocks Kareem down, right? He's one of the best players ever, and great Hall of Fame, right?
That's where your longevity comes into play. Like, okay, great, you played 40 years, and you scored 50,000 points. It's like, all right, well, there's guys that are scoring 50,000 points in 20 years. It's like they're way better than you.
Right.
Yeah, I got you.
That's where that criteria bend happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to lock it in, and you can't bend it. And that will knock people out.
Yeah, our Hall of Fame is unbendable.
Yes.
I like
no writer that gets to be like, I don't think so. It's like, no, this is what it takes. And then out of this criteria, who's the first? That's what I love about this Hall of Fame conversation and what we're doing with it. There's going to be a long time where we're going to have, and we're not going to have like a whole bunch of people. We're going one at a time, right? It's going to take a long time.
The Mount Rushmore of sports, and the Mount Rushmore of the criteria.
Yes.
The criteria of Mount Rushmore.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. We got that. That's a tough one.
But it's brilliant in the fact that there's just no doubters. Like that's what the criteria has to be, is that, yep, they belong.
Yeah.
No, they don't belong. Yeah, you can, they just, whatever. Like, the reality is everybody's doing steroids. Today, everybody's got doctors with little pills they're swallowing, and it tells them when they can work out and what they can't work out. And they're, drinking the shakes, and they're more enhanced than somebody on steroids these days. It's true. College kids are having that kind of things happening, Aaron Judge is more enhanced now than Barry Bonds was with any steroid. Let's just be flat out, Is he cheating? No, but his enhancement because of what science can do, right?
Oh yeah.
And I don't take anything away from Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge could be a Hall of Famer for what he does, right? Like, that's incredible. But that criteria is what's so beautiful, that nobody can say no.
I love the aspects that Tony brought to this conversation in regards to our Hall of Fame. I mean, thank you, because for me and Rob were kind of stuck in a little bit of a limbo at some points, and you kind of like opened that door for us, and for all of us, actually. I hope you're going to come back and join us, and we can do more of this and get into mischief and trouble and all that stuff, because this was fun. I have had a blast, Tony. Thank you. Now,
great time.
a little backstory on Tony and I. Tony was a few years older than I. He went to Sarah, played where Bonds played, played where Tom Brady played. Phenomenal ball player. Went to college at Kenyatta. I followed a couple years later. He was always a mentor to me, and he didn't know it. I always looked up to him, especially when I played against him. I always wanted to play harder. But thank you Thank you for smacking me around when I was a little asshole back then. Because I was, let's be honest, I was. And I appreciated that now that I look back on things. So thank you.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you. It's always nice to hear how you influence people in your lives, and I'm glad I made you play harder when we played against each other. That's what it's all about, and it's an ultimate compliment. So I appreciate you. Thank you much for saying that.
I need to get like radio audio and stuff because right here would be a perfect like.
Shut up. Shut up.
Oh, that'd be great. Anyways, this has been a great conversation on Hall of Fame. We can only do so much, and it's going to take us forever to do this. But I think we're starting. The conversation tonight was great because I think we got some good basis of what a criteria can start to be, and
Yep.
I think we can put those into play for the next show. That like here's the actual criteria. Number one, we're going to get into like 3 or 4 of them, and then do we stop? Or do we add? Like that's where I think the conversation the next show will be.
Yeah.
And then after that, let's start building the pool.
All right. I like it.
Well, man, from all of us here at What Up Sports, thank you, Coach, for joining us for 3 shows. And Hall of Fame, you're always welcome to join us. We want more people to join us. Comment down below. We want to hear what you think about this. This is fun for us. We're just having a good time. And man, this was a good show. I really enjoy this one. I really, really love it when we do these things.
Oh God, yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you. All
Until
right.
next time, we'll see you next time with What Up Sports.